Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab, sponsored by CPA Practice Advisor, with your hosts, Randy Johnston and Brian Tankersley.
Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab. I'm Randy Johnston with my co-host, Brian Tankersley. And oh my, we are so pleased to have guests on today's topic of Thomson Reuters Safesend. Now, of course, I've known Andrew Hatfield well for so doggone long, I almost hate to say it because some of you probably weren't born by that time. But we also have Thomson Reuters President Elizabeth Beastrom. We have technical expertise with Rahul Chandran. I mean, we have got a full house here today. So what I'd like to do is just give you an update on Safesend because the platform has been doing so many different good things which we think are valuable. Let me just set it up by saying this. The majority of tax delivery today is done with Safesend. Safesend operated as an independent company, the founders of which I know all of. The C paperless company evolved over time. They integrated with almost every tax platform in the market, those from Thomson Reuters, those from Wolters Kluwer, and Intuit, and so on. And we knew them to do a great job on the delivery side. But in the past year or so, they began doing more gathering, PBC, with AI gather type of capabilities. And they've introduced a new portal capability in the platform. There's just so doggone much technical stuff going on that it is a platform that is substantial. And when the acquisition of Safesend by Thomson Reuters occurred earlier this year, a little $600 million transaction, that illustrated in my mind the dedication of Thomson Reuters to the profession in this platform. So, Andrew, did I say anything wrong there, or what would you like to correct or add?
No, you're very accurate, Randy, very accurate. It's a very good summary of what's transpired. I think we'll probably get into this as we go along, but it's not just Safesend. I think one of the key topics is this shift with Thomson Reuters and how they view the build versus buy versus the siloed, or as I heard actually Brian put it perfectly when you had your podcast earlier about TR Synergy, is that Brian referred to it as mafia versus super friends, if I'm getting that correctly. And I think that we all know there was a time period where these large tax compliance vendors were very siloed or very in-house. And I think there's a big credit in why this acquisition and transaction happened and why Safesend was really on board with this is the leadership at Thomson Reuters today to be very open, to create that, back to you, Brian, that super friends where we create open partnerships, open integration, and we have a very similar vision to do what's best for the market in things like automating the tax process. And so it's not only Safesend, but it's been the acquisitions of SurePrep and the openness and the shift from TR from the likes of people like Elizabeth Beastrom as well.
Yeah, and Andrew, when you were saying that, I was thinking, yep, SurePrep, Materia with the AI efforts, and I could keep going down because it's
Capital confirmation.
And it's become very obvious to me, and I think a lot of the buyers in the marketplace, that this shift is occurring. And frankly, it seems like the technology behind these things is moving so fast, it is hard for legacy development and thinking to be, well, good enough. Is that a way to think about it?
I couldn't agree more with that. That's very much the case today. And we are in, as you mentioned earlier, we've known each other a very, very long time, both Randy and Brian. And as it turns out, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago, development of programs was a much larger resource task and a much slower task. And like all good things, as we trend forward with technology, we get a little less resource dependent and a little bit faster in what we're doing. But I'm sure we'll get into AI today at some point. And the uplift of AI, it's a big question, like what does it really mean inside of these, solving workflow processes? And we can give some examples of that. But the uplift of AI has just made things speed up and move faster. And so you really have to be moving with that current to stay current and to stay in a place where you can continue to develop at the pace that we need to. And we can dive into some of those things as well today if you'd like. But you're very
Right.
accurate.
You know, in fact, as you were talking about AI, that is exactly where I was going to go next with you, Andrew, because I am reflecting on the 88 portal competitors in the US market, some of which claim to have AI, and I've looked at it, and you know me well enough. I call some of it fake AI and some of it's real AI
Yeah.
'cause, I've written it. But, you know, and there's 56 practice management products, some of which are saying they've got AI in them and so forth. Well, you know, the bottom line here is, you know, when I think about the way Safesend works and I think about the opportunities across the profession, I believe that integrated AI makes a heck of a lot more sense to me. In other words, if you think about what's going on with CoCounsel and the whole AI integrations, what AI changes are you orchestrating inside SafeSend today? What's some things that make some difference? I suspect you're not like Meta, you know, firing 5,600 programmers because AI is taking that over. That doesn't sound like Andrew Hatfield, SafeSend, and Thomson Reuters. I don't know. What can you tell us?
Yeah. It's not, and I will let Rahul Chandran here comment because he does run our development group. So he'll be good at letting you know the intricacies of how it's uplifting the software and also how it's affecting our dev team and the resources and our capacity. But what I can tell you is that like when we hear AI, first of all, it's kind of a flag that a lot of vendors wave. So I'm going to agree 100% with your assessment there. And sometimes that's because if you wave the AI flag, you get a little higher valuation in your business, or you make a little noise, or you're keeping up with competition, right, that is doing similar things. Doesn't always necessarily mean that you're applying AI at that time or in a way that's like meaningful. And I think it's a fair question to ask, what does it mean in the narrow scope of what a firm's trying to solve as problematic workflows or areas where you have too manual process that needs to be elevated? For example, we know there's a large staffing issue. That's no secret. And the only way to solve that is through outsourcing of those resources, staffing, or to be able to uplift with technology that replaces people or creates automated software, which helps you sustain more work with the same number of people. So when you look at that, my question would be, as a firm, what am I trying to solve? What workflow am I focused in? And then how does this company apply AI to be helpful in that solution and what my needs are? And that answer can be tricky. And that kind of gets into the finite points of here's what we're doing. So here's what I can tell you. It was SafeSend, one of the biggest areas that AI has been helpful to us, and one of the largest areas that you see in the industry now moving from problem to solution is in the front end of the tax process and around the gather aspect. So of course, getting all the source documents from your clients, getting those into the firm, getting the data that you need out and into the next prep phase, because that over time has been a difficult thing to get good accuracy with. So if you think about it, Randy Brown, I'd say, why over the last 15, 20, 10 years has nobody really stepped up as a vendor to the accounting community and solved the gathering problem? Like, we all know that this is a hard issue to intake all of these documents and information. Every firm doing tax returns goes through it every year. They somehow get it done because tax returns get filed, although a lot may go on extension for not having all the information. And it gets to the point of like, why didn't somebody make this a better process when it's such a glaring problem? And I would go back to the companies like Safesend, for example, or maybe SurePrep and others, were really working with OCR, optical character recognition, and products that you could get to a certain accuracy level, but nobody really sat back and said, we can apply this to gather in a way that we can be so accurate that we can really make this easy for the taxpayers to input the docs to the firm and for the firm to be able to get accurate information, documents recognized, classified, and data extracted in a way that will actually be adopted. Now, TaxCaddy from SurePrep started down this path about 7 years ago, and that was one of the very first that I'm aware of to take a really hard run at this problem. So back to answering your question, for Safesend, we released within the last year a product called Gather AI. So Safesend as a company decided to work on the back end, the last mile, the delivery side of the problem of delivering tax returns, rather than starting on the front end, Gather, when we started our company in 2008 and along the way. And we did that because of the reasons I described. We didn't think the technology was there to do an accurate job. Now, within the last year, with the uplift of AI, and especially around the accuracy and the ability to classify the documents correctly that come in, the ability to recognize the data, recognize unstructured data, we've been able to create a very accurate solution, which was fast and highly adopted by the community. We have over 800 firms running on Gather AI. It's been out running barely 8 months, and the accuracy is really incredible on it. It's not just us. We could go through a list, and I know you've done some podcasts on companies that are entering this Gather space because the technology is there.
Yeah, and it turns out I was picturing sitting in the office with Dave Weil in Southern Cal when we were trying to do that tax caddy work initially, and it was like, oh my. And the iterations that we went through, it is a tough nut. And it's not only the PBC and document request list for tax, but we got a similar problem in client accounting services and a similar problem in audit. And
Yes.
it is a bugger. As one of my favorite sayings from 2016 from a CEO went, if you say it real fast, it sounds easy. You can gather this stuff. So Rahul, on the AI, what has your development team figured out that you can do on Gather AI to make it more optimal?
Hey, so I think Andrew covered it pretty well, but broadly speaking, AI is an exceptional tool for document classification, document extraction, data extraction, matching it up against a DRL, extracting a DRL. It's just way more automation than we could have imagined without it, right? And it gives us enormous leverage to even increase like developer productivity. So you can really like turn solutions around a lot faster than you could in the past. But it's just really good at dealing with documents. Like we read transmittals, for example, on the delivery side, and figure out stuff with like missing vouchers which don't exist in the packet, which would have been hard earlier. So, and this is just the beginning, right? Eventually you start talking about what agents can do and how much automation you can provide to the entire system. We're just getting started. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
in fact, I had just written an article on agentic AI, which was published in the last week or so. So I do appreciate that. Are you using AI to leverage and get better OCR recognition too with your team?
I think no. So yes and no. Computer vision is like significantly better than OCR, and it's almost at a point where I don't think it's fair to conflate the two. I think in the early days of like vision and layout models, you could have said, sure, it's like a successor to OCR. At this point, both the training and the tech are quite different. I don't know much about OCR. I'm not going to make any claims about OCR. Vision's just better. Over
Yeah.
time is just better.
Yeah, in fact, when SurePrep did the 100% guarantee on PDF recognition from original sources, I thought that was pretty stunning. So now, Elizabeth, I'm going to kind of call you out on this one for a moment because, when you're in your type of position, you wind up with this visionary thing, and obviously, you've helped make the deal to bring Safesend to the fold, to bring Materia to the fold, and so forth. So do you have some sort of overarching, a strategy that you're trying to execute here? I'm not trying to have you tip any confidences or any of that, but you're making a difference. I can say that for bloody sure. So what's going on?
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that and noticing. I'm going to say two words to you. I'm going to say efficiency and accuracy. That's what our products were always based on, and we were always striving to make the experience better for our customers and for our customers' customers, for them to be more efficient in what they're doing. And I would say, with SurePrep, with Materia, with Safesend, I'm going to add into that ease and use and integration. So efficiency, accuracy, ease and use, and integration. And Andrew touched on it briefly, but this open platform, it's a big deal for us now. We want to make sure that where our customers find value in the products, that we're able to connect to that. And that's what gets me so excited in general. If you're looking at the tax workflow specifically, if you break down the steps at the highest level, gather, compute, research, and deliver, we have products in all of these categories right now and can have an end-to-end seamless integration across that tax workflow that will result in more efficiency for our clients, continued accuracy, and more importantly, an ease in use and a very seamless integrated experience.
And I'm pleased to hear you say that, because we have talked about the end-to-end process from business development to onboarding to gather all the way through to delivery and payment. So, maybe your future includes a little more on the front end, a little bit more on the back end. I'm not trying to speak for you, but it's clear that this integration capability, and just as important in my line of thinking, the APIs, particularly for the larger firms, to be able to expose some of that is important. And based on the firms that I've been in personally in the last year, and that's dozens and dozens of them, the inefficiencies in processes still abound. The personnel shortages are still notable. And trying to solve this with outsourcing has been the short-term solution, but it sounds like AI might help us a little bit in a longer term solution. Yeah, Brian.
Yes, I was just going to ask Andrew and Elizabeth and Rahul, you know, what are you having, one of the opportunities that we've seen for some time is the retrieval of source documents from all these different sources. And it seems like we've got especially the financial services providers that have, the 1098s and the 1099 MISCs and 1099 divs and all of those forms, they get delivered over portals like Black Diamond and others. Are you making any headway, or is anybody making any headway? Are you seeing a light at the end of the tunnel that we might be able to have a way to retrieve those at some point in the intermediate term, possibly?
Yeah, Earl, I'll let you comment from the tech. I mean, like this is, so Brian said, like a very difficult solve, and it's kind of like
Agreed.
consolidation.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And
So,
it's
so how do
fraught
you,
with regulatory minds. But I figured I'd ask you all the question
yeah,
anyway, see if it
yeah,
would work.
it gives me, yeah, it gives me pause to even think about it. So we've been aware and looked at this for a very long time as how do you solve across all of those disparate sources? How do we consolidate all this information into a firm? And there's so many different variants of where this information is coming in from, especially when you get into the examples that you provided, that it gets really difficult. I don't know that anybody, including us, has a off-the-shelf solution for it today. It would be almost impossible to have a direct line of sight to every one of these disparate institutions. I mean, sure, you could pick off a portion of them, and you could do that by who represents the largest percentage, but 100% blanket of that would be very, very difficult. So it's more about once he gets in, can we consolidate and recognize it all? And I don't know, Roll, I mean, since you're closer on the, what's coming in the future side of things from a technological standpoint, I mean, what's your view on,
No,
is
I
it
think,
possible and how do you do it? Yeah, what's the vision?
I mean, in theory, technologically speaking, it is possible, but there's a bunch of like regulatory issues. And it's honestly just at this point, I haven't spent too much time actually thinking about solving this problem. It's something that definitely would add a lot of value if you could solve it. There's just a lot of issues. Testing
Yeah,
itself is an example.
yeah, I think our approach has been that we're trying to solve the accuracy issues and the
Right.
ease of use issues around the documents that are easier to control and to consolidate in from the taxpayer side, and leaving the much broader, much more difficult problem out there for the solve once we get the rest of it across the board done. And I think we're making really fast movement across the accuracy and the Gather AI program that we have to get the bulk of documents in outside of the scenario you described, Brian. But I don't know, and I talked to a lot of companies outside of ours that are, coming in from the outside with, the newer technology, the uplifting AI, you probably talk to a lot of these businesses too, of course. And I see some really lofty goals in trying to solve this and trying to solve a much broader scope of the entire workflow from A to Z, from gather to delivery. And I don't see anybody that's actually accomplished that's in the market, or I've seen a clear vision of how they're going to do it.
Yeah, so Andrew, your observation there again, as Brian said, this is a bugger to solve. It's tough. We are beginning to see some vendors that have platforms that are working, but these are really hard problems to solve. I'm going to call out a technical term, RPKI. We're going to want to have all of these systems enabled that way, for example. And again, it's beyond the scope of what we might talk about today, but there's plumbing problems at a low level to solve this. And frankly, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. And, I just go back to, and this is going to sound old home week to you, Andrew. I just go back to a conversation I had with you and Jim about, look, I just want to get this stuff out the door, and in the door and out the door. I think that's the way he said it to me. In the door and out the door, making it easier to do. So as I'm reflecting, Elizabeth, on your four, takes on what's happening here, if we just make it easier, we could just grease the skids here of work that's being done by the firms today. That really helps a whole lot.
That's to that point. I'll make this observation short, but to your point, Randy, and I do remember, and you're calling a conversation from a very long time ago here for recollection, and that was spoken from. You mentioned Jim, who was a tax technology partner at the firm that you were referring to. And that's sort of, to me, that's what the market, like, they don't necessarily care how it gets done. They just want to be easy from the client to get the information in, and they can turn it and get it out. And that really was a great summary. And that was coming straight from the horse's mouth of somebody that was in the seat and just wanted that scenario to happen. And I think that we are solving for that today. Maybe we haven't solved the much broader, bigger issue, but we're making it easier for that to happen. And between the tax caddies and the Safesend Gather AI, we're seeing fast, high adoption in Safesend Gather AI at a very high rate. As I mentioned, we onboarded over 800 plus firms in a very short period of time, which to me is a huge reflection of the problem in the industry, the trust from our brand, and the fact that we make it really easy to do it. And that really is getting a big clog in that drain pushed through and letting it flow into the firm at a much faster rate than the industry has seen it before.
Yeah, and this whole issue about client experience, I can't tell you how many practitioners I've talked to that said, I just want it to be easy. I don't really even want to know how the technology works. I just want it to bloody work. And that's kind of where they go. So I do understand that there's still much to be done in this area. So what I'd like to do maybe next is just give any of the three of you as our guests just a chance to say, here's something that's significant about the Safesend platform. Here's something significant about our technology. Here's something significant about the company that you'd like our listeners to know. So I'm leaving it pretty wide open for you there.
I'll start it off with the company. And, part of the reason it was so important for us, and I'll go back to 2022 when we started the partnership with Safesend. You look at it and it's a great product. It makes ease of use, check the box for our customers and their customers.
Agreed.
It integrates easily, as you said, it integrates with us, it integrates with our competitors. And it's the people, though. You look at the people, and we've just spent, the last few minutes chatting and getting you reacquainted with them. And it's the people and the relationships. So Safesend is a great product, but it's based on great people. So this acquisition to us was critical, not only to help from that seamless integration within our workflow, but the talent that came with the Safesend acquisition as well. I couldn't be excited about both of those aspects of it. And, when you look at the company, it's a fit. And I'm going to quote Andrew from another interview that we had done, but it was the perfect match at the perfect time when we were coming together. And I can't be more excited for the future potential that it's going to bring for our customers.
Yeah, so Elizabeth, Brian and I vet a lot of products, but our first vet is always the people. That's number one. And then number two, this is going to sound really odd too, financial stability, because we don't want somebody that's going to be here today, gone tomorrow. And then it usually gets to, okay, you've proven that those two things are going to work, and I trust good people to do good things and the right things, and you got to have enough resources to get it done. Okay, so what's your vision? What are you doing next? And that's where the technology tends to set in. And because we're known as technologists, sometimes people think we're technology first, but that people first vision, and frankly, in firms, to me, it's team members first. It's people first inside the firms
100%.
too, right?
100%. Well
So
stated.
there you go. So thank you for that observation. Andrew, Rahul, other things that you'd want to call out?
Yeah, just a few things to call out, and look, just a cornerstone on the foundation that Elizabeth and you, Randy, both echoed and laid about people. It still is really about people, and I couldn't agree more with that. And the tribe that you bring into a company that you're building, and the tribe of people that you spoke off of the internal staff into relationships and partnerships, and people in the industry and your customers, and like the tribe just gets bigger and bigger, and it's so important. With Safesend, I think there was kind of a call out where if a firm who's a client of Safesend, if I'm talking to them at, let's say, AICPA Tech or one of the conferences or BDO or et cetera, and we're chatting, and they say, we really like Safesend. And I said, one of the reasons that you really like it is because your clients, the taxpayers, don't call you and complain about it. And if it's quiet, if your phone line is quiet from customers, who call in and say, I'm not sure why you're making me do this process. Why can't I just mail it to you? What happened to the old way we used to do it? I'm unsure what to do in the next step. I'm trying to finish my return and I can't. If your phone is quiet to those points, then we're really doing our job. And at Safesend, one of the reasons I think that we succeed there is, look, we have a customer satisfaction rated CSAT score 97.4. We have a net promoter score NPS of 65 across our full suite, 98% retention. Obviously, we got a good acquisition with Thomson Reuters because they saw a great company. But the reason that this all works is it's the people in the tribe, but it's because we're all very pragmatic and simple in our approach. We don't try to overcomplicate what doesn't need to be overcomplicated. For example, you could build the best gather or delivery products in the market, but if a taxpayer, the client of a firm, calls the tax partner and says, I can't figure this out, why are you making me do this? Then what's the point of having the greatest solution if people can't get through the process? And I think we've never lost focus on the fact that it has to be easy to use and simple to use. And the other thing is, we don't express ourselves to be smarter than every other vendor, smarter than the industry. We don't dictate what the market should do. We listen to the market. And I know there's a lot of rhetoric about that out there, but we truly believe it within our tribe. Look, Randy, you've known me a very long time. We started a company, and Brian, you too, and we started a company in 2008. So here we are in 2025. What we've built is a reflection of every client that we've acquired. So every client that we gained, we listened to their feedback and we sent it to Rahul, and Rahul went to the development team and he built what the clients were asking for. And when you do that over a decade of time, you end up with some pretty good products. And that's the magic, sauce. That's the magic of the whole thing, is listen to your client base and then build what they're asking you for and try to make it as simple as possible.
Can't say it better than that, but as you were saying it, I'm thinking, I'm from Kansas, keep it simple.
Yeah,
KS, I've
that's
said
right.
that more than once. And
That's right.
under promise, over perform.
That's right.
You have done both of those for decades, honestly, and I'm so pleased with you and your company result on that and what you've done for your clients. So, Rahul, anything from your side? Otherwise, I'm going to ask Brian.
I think, it's just listening to customers is true, but also me personally and everybody who works for me, we have a lot of fun building what we build. And I think that just shows. And I have a lot of fun doing this, and that's really important.
Yeah, that is super. Well, Brian, you've been listening to this. You've been a little more quiet than normal today, but what would you have as key takeaways for our listeners from the conversation with the Safesend folks, with Rahul, Andrew, and Elizabeth?
It just really strikes me how different the technology is that we use in the profession today than when I joined it in 1992 with one of the big, at the time, six firms to today, and it's been such a privilege to go on this trip with you, Andrew, over the last 20 years, and Randy and the listeners. And it's very excited about this open future that we're moving toward today, and I can't wait to see what's coming next from you.
Well, so with that in mind, I do want to thank all of our guests today, Elizabeth Beastrom and Andrew Hatfield and Rahul Chandran. Thank you so much for being here. And, I would just say if you are interested in a platform that can do gathering and delivery, kind of an end-to-end experience, the folks at Safesend have built that. It's now part of the Thomson Reuters family. We know and trust these folks and have for a long time. And so if you're looking for a way to solve that problem in your practice, do reach out to your Thomson Reuters rep in this area. And as ever, we appreciate you listening in today, and we'll talk to you again soon in another Accounting Technology Lab. Good day.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We'll be back next Saturday with a new episode of the Technology Lab from CPA Practice Advisor. Have a great week.